Welcome on in. WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following the podcast. Of course, our video feed, 94 WIP. Check out the YouTube page. Give a subscription there as we react to a disaster in Seattle. I mean, there's no other way to put what happened last night. The Eagles have a lead at the half. The Eagles have a 10-point lead in the game, and they blow it to the Seattle Seahawks, losing now 3 in a row and putting really everything, and I mean everything, on the table to discuss in terms of what are we talking about here? What is going on with this football team? Do they have the answers from the head coach, the change of coordinator? Maybe they changed the wrong coordinator. Obviously, the quarterback and all the issues they're going to have to fix on the defensive side of the football moving forward. Let's just start with this. We did a whole thing for 2 months as we tried to pretend reality wasn't reality with the Eagles. It was. There is no magic formula to winning all these close games. Yes, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick could do it for 20 years, but they're the best to ever do what they do. The Eagles have created a scenario where they are not good enough this year to win by margin against anyone. And this is why last week I said the idea of them winning 4 in a row here is crazy, because what game, and maybe the Giants next week, but again, how could you say that with confidence right now? What game have they shown they could win by margin where the sweat is gone? None. The entire year. So this is the way the Eagles play. They're going to be in these games all year. Last night felt like the Jets game, the Patriots game, the Chiefs game, the Commanders game, the Cowboys game, all rolled into one thing. And all those games came right down to the end. Sometimes a bounce goes your way. Sometimes a drop goes your way. Sometimes it does not. And last night it did not. The Eagles were due for a close game loss. They just were. They won the Bills game close. They won the Chiefs game close. They won the Cowboys game close. They won the Commanders game close. They had lost the Jets one. Before that, they had won the Commanders. And they had won, obviously, week 1 against the Patriots. They were due for another one of these. So I'm not surprised in the end the outcome went that way. That being said, the fact that they have to play these close games, the fact they can't put a team quarterbacked by Drew Lock, and that is one of the worst defenses in the NFL this season away, that's the problem. And that's why the Eagles, just quite frankly, right now aren't close to a Super Bowl team. Let's start with the offense, because I think that's where the biggest blame is. And then we'll get the defense differences we saw with Patricia, the good, and obviously the not so good on that 92-yard drive by Drew Lock to finish that game and win it for Seattle. Starting with the offense, it's about the quarterback. And Jalen Hurts is not playing good enough. His last 3 games, his passer rating is 71. You look across the board with numbers now, and he ranks somewhere between 9 and 14, some areas 18 among quarterbacks. I had a conversation on the midday show last week. I said he's not playing like a top 5 quarterback in the league. Or was it last week or 2 weeks ago? He's not. It's not even close anymore. He's getting worse as the season goes on, not better. And do I think the Eagles give him a lot of easy answers in the passing game? No. Do I think this offense is creative? No. Do I think Nick Sirianni has answers in this offense? I do not. I think he is very, very below the curve in terms of creativity on offense compared to other coaches in the NFL. I do not think it's above average here at all. That being said, Jalen Hurts himself is not playing well enough. I know he was sick last night. Admirable he played, but he didn't play well enough. Now, he ran really well, 82 yards, obviously the 2 touchdowns. As long as Jalen Hurts is functional, he will be a productive running quarterback. That's who he is. It's Steve McNairish. It's Cam Newton-ish. Go back to any of the great rushing quarterbacks of all time. He will provide something with his legs. He did it when he didn't even know what he was doing out there in 2020. But as a thrower and as an anticipatory thrower and seeing the field, he's gone backwards this year. He just has. I think he still throws a really catchable football, and he throws well when he sets his feet. It's not a physical problem. Though it strikes me as a mental problem with Jalen Hurts, where he's either making the wrong decision or seeing the field the wrong way, seeing the pass rush the wrong way. Brian Baldinger put up a highlight this morning, or broke down some highlights on his Twitter page of 3 plays, and it's alarming quarterback play. Late third quarter, when he takes the shot to AJ down the field, and he has Devontae Smith on the crosser, which would have been an easy. He had his defender beat by 8-9 yards. It's an easy pitch and catch, and then Devontae could have run for a while. You go late into that game, and the possession before the Seahawks got the ball back for the 92-yard drive by Drew Lock, 3rd down, what we saw on just the TV feed, it's Hurts, taking the snap and then pretty quickly, very, very quickly, running to his right, avoiding what he perceived as pressure, scrambling around right. He goes all the way back left, nothing there. He throws all kind of off balance. I think he skipped it to whoever it was, Goddard or a receiver, incomplete, and we had to punt the football away. And all of a sudden, the Seahawks have it back. 92 yards later, we know what happened. If you watch the highlight, the way Brian Baldinger broke it down, boom. If the pocket is not bad. Like he's perceiving pressure that's not there. And I don't know if this has to do with his knee injury that has been, obviously affecting him all year, and he doesn't want to get hit again on that. The way he got hit in the Dallas game and it kind of buckled. If it is coaching, if he's just not being drilled the way he was last year about pocket presence, because his pocket presence has gotten worse. I mean, you can tell me all the stats you want about how he's thrown better from the pocket. He has. And his completion percentage from the pocket is better, and all that kind of stuff, passer rating. But his pocket presence stinks right now. Bailed from the pocket, created a play, out of nowhere. And then we go to the last drive where they don't need much more there to get into field goal range, and he's pushing the ball down the field. He's pushing the ball down the field for a big play to A.J. Brown, and it's an interception. And then obviously the Quez Watkins pass down the field. Is that the time? I don't know. I mean, is that the time for the play? You watch that play on a highlight. It did look like A.J. Brown kind of just gave up on the play right away. This passing game right now is so out of sync. It's getting worse and worse as the weeks go on. And this is starting to remind me a little bit of the end of the 2014 season. And when we bring Tucker on in a few minutes, I'm sure he'll know what I'm talking about. Chip Kelly. And what I mean by that is that offense was special. 2013 when they got going with Nick Foles. And they came out in 2014 early. It was choppier, but they were still scoring enough points. And then something happened after Thanksgiving 2014 where it died. I mean, it died. The Seahawks were on it. The Washington was on it. Everybody, Dallas was on it when they came here and they won a Sunday night game. Everyone was on what the Eagles were doing offensively, and they never figured it out and never got going again. And then the next year just, obviously devolved into a disaster. We are going that way with this Sirianni offense and Brian Johnson's offense, where it was productive but choppy, and then it was figured out, and then we'll see if they get back up off the map. But the offense last night, just not good enough. I mean, just not good enough. You can't. Jalen Hurts yesterday or last evening was 5 for 5 on the first drive of the game. It reminded me of the Jets game in so many ways, but they have a long drive to start the game, and it's good to start the game, and they score to start the game. And then there was just nothing else. Like the offense basically did nothing the rest of the game. So Jalen Hurts last night, 5 of 5 on the opening drive. The rest of the game, 12 of 26 for 104 yards, 2 interceptions. I mean, that's bad. That's not just mediocre. That is bad against a Seahawks defense, that's not very good. All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. Then we'll go Tucker's thoughts on what we're watching right now as this team has lost 3 straight games. So defensively, I actually saw a lot of improvement last night overall. Now, I know Drew Lock is not very good, but I thought they were just quicker to the ball last night. I thought they tackled better. I thought there was more aggression to them. And I like that they were up on the receivers a little bit more. That play that Bradley Roby made in the first quarter where he's bumping DK Metcalf in the slot, and then they get off the line, and he bumps him, kind of takes him off his timing a little bit, and then immediately tackles him when he catches the ball in front of the sticks. Those are plays they weren't making earlier this season, even last week. So I did see something a little bit better there with Matt Patricia. Now, is it a market difference? I don't know. They still can't stop the run, which has been a problem now for the better part of 5 weeks. They're getting gassed up the middle. Shaq Leonard, look, go watch some of those highlights. You see why he was in the street 2 weeks ago. I can't believe this guy held a free agent tour when he's just getting spun around in circles in the middle of that defense, and Kenneth Walker's going wherever he wants. So that's not great. But I overall, better feeling about the defense this past game than Patricia. Now, it was dampened by the end because of what happened on the 92-yard drive. And what stood out to me, just thinking about what they did and watching what they did, and then last night going back and watching it again, is they just attacked James Bradbury in that last drive. It wasn't Ringo, who I thought showed something last night. It wasn't Ricks, wasn't Job. It was James Bradbury. That's who they wanted to go after on that last drive. Him. A guy the Eagles paid a good amount of money to in the offseason. A guy that last year was one of the best corners in the NFL. He hasn't just lost a step. He's cooked. He can't stay. He can't cover his own shadow. He can't stay with anyone that has a modicum of speed. If the play's not underneath where he could use his smarts and pick up on what he saw in film, he has no chance. So we're watching the deterioration of a corner in front of our eyes here. And we know at this position, when that goes, it goes fast. Starting next week, starting the game against Arizona, the next Giants game into the playoffs, where they're going to be seated, they have to seriously consider. I mean, I said yesterday, they're going to have 2 new starting corners next year. I don't care what the cap is. They'll figure it out, trade or release these 2 guys. Slay and Bradbury are out of here. I believe they'll both be gone. One of these young guys may emerge as a starter for next year, and I think they'll go after a big star, whether it be a trade or free agency, or maybe draft one in the first round. But these guys can't be it, and especially Bradbury, who's really gotten destroyed all season. I liked what I saw out of Ringo last night. He competed, but the Bradbury thing is just rough. I mean, it is rough out there, and I don't think it's a surprise. The Seahawks went after him. This team has now lost 3 straight games. And when you look at their point differential and you just think back to the season, how they've played, this feels like a 500 team that fooled a lot of people for a long time, and they're masquerading around a 10-4. And we're talking about tiebreakers and what they could do for the division and whatnot. But look at the way they've played. They look from the quarterback to the offensive line to the penalties to the fundamentals to the lack of tackling, can't stop the run. They look like a 500 team when you watch them play. Tucker, last night wasn't a game against the 49ers. We could say, oh, they're just the best team. It wasn't Dallas and extra rest. You could say, well, it's Dallas at home. It was the Seahawks with Drew Lock, a Seahawks team that had won like 1 game in, 6 or 7 weeks. That was alarming.
Yeah, it was bad. And, I think the defense played a little bit better. I don't know how much of that was playing against Drew Lock and that Seattle offense, because I really felt it was weird. They didn't really target DK Metcalf at all until the final drive when they had to score. And then they thought, well, let's just get the ball to the best player on the field. And he pretty much drugged them the first 70 yards down the field until he was able to find, Jackson Smith and Chigba for the touchdown. But offensively watching it, you compare them to the 2014 Eagles, which, by the way, the second highest scoring team in franchise history, behind only the 2022 Eagles, who had an extra game, but that's besides the point. But I kind of compare them to the 2010 Eagles, right? When Michael Vick, who they played at, a really, really high level, and then they kind of fell back to earth at the end of the season. And they fooled everybody by, playing really great in the fourth quarter against that Giants team and clinching the division in the fashion that they did. But they maybe were just above average. They were a good team that maybe caught people off guard and looked to be great. And what we've seen from this team this year, it's frustrating to me, because when they were winning all those games early on, it was easy to say, well, just imagine when they put everything together, right? Just imagine. We know what this team could be, but they're winning now, not playing their best. Well, I'm starting to wonder if maybe that was their best. And from what we've seen from Jalen Hurts, who I think has taken a huge step backward, I don't think it's crazy to say that. I just think watching this offense right now, it's really frustrating. And they make too many mistakes for a team that maybe isn't this talented to go this far. I tweeted out a stat last night, and I talked about it a little bit last week, but the Eagles were the best team in the first half last year. And I think that points a lot to coaching and scheme. When you're really successful on early downs, we know the Eagles are terrible on first down this year. And when you're really successful in the first half, right? When your game plan is dictating what you're doing offensively, the Eagles scored 20 points in the first half 10 different times last year. They haven't done it once this year. Like they sputter out of the gate every single week, even if they have a great opening drive like they did on Monday night against Seattle. That's great. You can even point to those drives they had against San Francisco where they sputtered in the red zone. Fine. You move the ball down the field, but then they don't do anything, right? Like then we get back to the third quarter and man, they really need to put together a drive because they haven't done anything in 20 minutes. And, I jokingly say, I don't know who's going to be calling offensive plays this week, but I really think it's time to discuss who's going to be calling offensive plays, because if what Sean Desai did, created a situation where he lost his job, and Brandon Graham was on the morning show today and flat out said, Matt Patricia's the defensive coordinator. Sean Desai is no longer the defensive coordinator. This offense is just stagnant. It sputters. It doesn't move. And you have Christian McCaffrey on the Manning cast last night calling out the Eagles plays as the Eagles line up. He's saying, oh, this is going to be Jalen Hurts' draw where the tight end comes across on a sift block. And sure enough, it is. And the Eagles only gained 2 yards. And if this guy's doing it from his couch without sitting in the defensive meetings, what's that tell you about what the defenses know about this offense? And right now, when you aren't getting the deep balls to Hurts and Smith down the sideline, they don't have a shot at moving the ball consistently.
They don't. And that part you mentioned with McCaffrey is alarming. And that makes me think back to what I said a few minutes ago and the comparison to the 2014 Eagles. That, like, the Sirianni thing, right? Is it his fault that Jalen's not throwing to the underneath receiver? No. I mean, they could coach that into him, but the player's got to make the play on the field, all that. And Sirianni can't tell him not to throw a pick late in the game. All that stuff is happening, and Bradbury cooked is also not Sirianni's fault. But that stuff is. And that's on coaching. And this, I just haven't felt all year. This is a super well-coached team. And that reminds me of the thud that the Chip Kelly thing hit. Because when teams figured out what they were doing, there was no counter. There was no counter. Jalen hasn't countered back enough to what's happening to him. And maybe part of that is because it's physical. Because he can't do it as well as he did it last year. Maybe he's just wearing down physically compared to what he was as a runner and just an athlete a couple of years ago. This does happen to mobile quarterbacks. It's the way the game works. And I just don't think the head coach is a counter. And that is alarming that McCaffrey's calling that out. Ugly night in Seattle as the Eagles drop their third straight game. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following WIP Daily. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk soon.